लाइफ में लेना देना तो चलता रहता है। इधर फ्लेक्सी लोन से बोरो कर लिया और उधर बाय मॉम डैड का वेकेशन डन। शादी का डिसीजन लिया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से और बोरो किया। प्रमोशन मिला तो ये लो थोड़ा लोन वापस कर दिया। थैंक यू। नए इंटीरियर्स का डील किया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से फिर थोड़ा ले लिया। ईयर एंड बोनस मिला तो इस बार लोन ज्यादा वापस कर दिया। लाइफ में लेना देना चलता रहेगा तो लोन्स में क्यों नहीं। इसीलिए फ्लेक्सी लोन फ्रॉम बजाज फिनसर्व एक ऐसा लोन जो जब चाहे बोरो करें, जैसे चाहे रीपे करें, वो भी चुटकी में। थिंक इट डन विद बजाज फिनसर्व।
हेलो, हर सीजन के लिए नए इंटीरियर्स।
हाँ, वो भी हर रूम के लिए।
फ्रिज, स्मार्टफोन या बड़ा टीवी,
तीनों क्यों नहीं?
अरे ये तो शॉपिंग लिस्ट में नहीं था।
सो अब शॉपिंग कार्ट में तो है। सॉरी।
अच्छा, नए आउटफिट्स की विश लिस्ट।
विश क्यों? Just add to cart and buy.
तो ये सब EMI पे?
और वो भी चुटकी में। On India's fastest growing EMI network. Think it done with Bajaj Finserv.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
माँ के बेडरूम का एसी या लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई, लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई, लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई। पुणे, पटना, चेन्नई, मथुरा या फिर बेगूसराय, या फिर बेगूसराय, या फिर बेगूसराय। नए घर के लिए चाहिए 4K टीवी हाई फाई, या फिर वाइफ को चाहिए लेटेस्ट स्टाइल। EMI है ना, EMI है ना, EMI। मॉड्यूलर किचन में पुराना फ्रिज क्यों है भाई?
शादी है नहीं, मैट्रेस पुराना है भाई, पुराना है भाई। अक्खा इंडिया बोले भाई प्राइजेस है हाई, बेस्ट ही खरीदना है तो अपने EMI स्टोर पर आए।
EMI है ना, EMI।
अब काशी हो या वाशी, महंगा लगे तो EMI और बेस्ट ही चाहिए तो भी EMI, क्योंकि बजाज फिनसर्व का EMI है ना। विजिट www.emistore.com।
EMI है ना, EMI है ना, EMI।
नाची 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 नाची। धोखा है धोखा, धोखा ना खाओ जी। नाची 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 नाची। इंश्योरेंस फ्रॉड से बचना है बहुत जरूरी जी। नाची 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 नाची। वो एजेंट है या फ्रॉड पता लगाओ जी। एक्स्ट्रा ऑफर के झांसे में कहीं फंस ना जाओ जी।
अगर कोई अनजान कॉलर इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी डिटेल्स मांगे तो कह देना उनको
नाची 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 नाची।
मिलके स्कैम को एंड करो, हमेशा सेफ रहो जी। Always verify the caller and do not surrender your insurance for attractive offers. हमेशा सावधान रहे, सेफ रहे। Issued in the interest of public awareness by Bajaj Finserv.
नाची 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 नाची। धोखा है धोखा, धोखा ना खाओ जी। नाची 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 नाची। जो होगा सो होगा ऐसे ना सोचो जी। नाची नाची
कह देना उनको। मिलके स्कैम को एंड करो, हमेशा सेफ रहो जी।
Being a hero is all about heart. It's not about ruling the world. It's about owning it. It's not about winning a race. It's about delivering a smile to the human race. It's about a spirit that just cannot be confined by geographies. It's about the heart that beats for the future and a soul that echoes the values of generations. And yet, being a hero is never about the hero. It's about the millions who celebrate them. Hero Motorcorp, the motorcycle leader. There's a gush of wind that hums a sweet song. There's a gush of wind that fights like a hero to fill the world with possibility. There's a gush of wind that jumps across oceans and mountains, embracing the entire planet. There's a gush of wind that blows away darkness. There's a gush of wind that blows for humanity. Because at Hero, we care.
In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. Is about delivering excellence across business sectors. About building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata. Leadership with trust.
Behold, the story of victory, of life over malady. Behold the saga of power, of science over sickness. Behold the tale of triumph, of dedication over disease. Behold the rise and rise of Cadila Pharmaceuticals Limited, one of India's largest privately held pharmaceutical companies based out of Ahmedabad, Gujarat, India. Cadila Pharmaceuticals was born out of the vision of a legend who left an indelible mark in the chronicles of Indian pharmaceuticals industry. He was Indravadan Ambalal Modi, the founder chairman of the company, rightfully christened as the medicine man of India. His vision to alleviate pain of the underprivileged through research-driven innovations has been driving Cadila Pharmaceuticals for more than 6 decades now. Innovations which are backed by the key strengths of the company, the state-of-the-art manufacturing and research facilities. The flagship manufacturing facility at Dholka, Gujarat, sprawls over 100 acres. This avant-garde facility is US FDA approved, besides meeting most of the stringent quality standards across the globe. It manufactures tablets, capsules, injectables, liquids, and orals. The second formulations manufacturing facility is located at Samba in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The API facilities at Ankleshwar, Gujarat, manufacture a large number of key APIs and intermediates at this US FDA and ISO 9002 and ISO 14001 accredited plant. The company also has set up its first ever overseas formulation manufacturing facility at Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. This world-class facility is the only WHO CGMP compliant manufacturing facility in the region. More than 850 products spread across 12 specialties with many of India's top brands in its basket. Great goals are defined by far-sighted vision and achieved by seamless teamwork. A multicultural, multilingual and multinational workforce of over 7,000 employees is truly the propelling power of the company. Not just in the domestic market, the company has a wide global footprint with over 1,000 marketing authorizations across 85 countries. Its international sales force of over 150 highly diversified and versatile personnel lends it an outreach that blankets the globe. As the company grows, so does its commitment to research. Manned by more than 350 scientists, the R&D facilities of Cadila Pharmaceuticals at Dholka, Gujarat is an institution of breakthrough innovations. To take the focus on innovation to the next level, it partners with leading international companies to discover newer treatments. The Cadila Pharmaceuticals Group is gigantic. Its group companies complement and expand the dynamic vision of the company across new avenues of healthcare and newer fast-paced business areas. Cadila Pharmaceuticals is a gentle giant. Decades of dedicated research, groundbreaking healthcare innovations, and worldwide impact proves the infinite potential of one powerful emotion. Care. The success of Cadila Pharmaceuticals bears testimony to the fact that the care continues.
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम, आने वाला कल होगा हमारा, नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
लाइफ में लेना देना तो चलता रहता है। इधर फ्लेक्सी लोन से बोरो कर लिया और उधर बाय मॉम डैड का वेकेशन डन। शादी का डिसीजन लिया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से और बोरो किया। प्रमोशन मिला तो ये लो थोड़ा लोन वापस कर दिया। थैंक यू। नए इंटीरियर्स का दिल किया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से फिर थोड़ा ले लिया। ईयर एंड बोनस मिला तो इस बार लोन ज्यादा वापस कर दिया। लाइफ में लेना देना चलता रहेगा तो लोन्स में क्यों नहीं। इसीलिए फ्लेक्सी लोन फ्रॉम बजाज फिनसर्व एक ऐसा लोन जो जब चाहे बोरो करे, जैसे चाहे रीपे करे, वो भी चुटकी में। थिंक इट डन विद बजाज फिनसर्व।
हेलो, हर सीजन के लिए नए इंटीरियर्स?
हाँ, वो भी हर रूम के लिए।
फ्रिज, स्मार्टफोन या बड़ा टीवी?
तीनों क्यों नहीं?
अरे ये तो शॉपिंग लिस्ट में नहीं था।
सो अब शॉपिंग कार्ट में तो है। सॉरी।
अच्छा, नए आउटफिट्स की विश लिस्ट।
विश क्यों? जस्ट ऐड टू कार्ट एंड बाय।
तो ये सब EMI पे?
और वो भी चुटकी में। On India's fastest growing EMI network. Think it done with Bajaj Finserv.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
माँ के बेडरूम का एसी या लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई, लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई, लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई। पुणे, पटना, चेन्नई, मथुरा या फिर बेगूसराय,
या फिर बेगूसराय।
नए घर के लिए चाहिए 4K टीवी हाई फाई, या फिर वाइफ को चाहिए लेटेस्ट स्टाइल। EMI है ना, EMI है ना, EMI।
मॉड्यूलर किचन में पुराना फ्रिज क्यों है भाई?
शादी है नहीं, मैट्रेस पुराना है भाई। अक्खा इंडिया बोले भाई प्राइजेस है हाई, बेस्ट ही खरीदना है तो अपने EMI स्टोर पर आए।
EMI है ना, EMI।
अब काशी हो या वाशी, महंगा लगे तो EMI और बेस्ट ही चाहिए तो भी EMI, क्योंकि बजाज फिनसर्व का EMI है ना। विजिट www.emistore.com।
EMI है ना, EMI है ना, EMI।
नाची 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 नाची। धोखा है धोखा, धोखा ना खाओ जी। नाची 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 नाची। इंश्योरेंस फ्रॉड से बचना है बहुत जरूरी जी। नाची 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 नाची। वो एजेंट है या फ्रॉड पता लगाओ जी। एक्स्ट्रा ऑफर के झांसे में कहीं फंस ना जाओ जी।
अगर कोई अनजान कॉलर इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी डिटेल्स मांगे तो कह देना उनको।
नाची 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 नाची। मिलके स्कैम को एंड करो, हमेशा सेफ रहो जी।
Always verify the caller and do not surrender your insurance for attractive offers. हमेशा सावधान रहे, safe रहे. Issued in the interest of public awareness by Bajaj Finserv.
नाची 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 नाची। धोखा है धोखा, धोखा ना खाओ जी। नाची 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 नाची। जो होगा सो होगा, ऐसे ना सोचो जी। नाची 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 नाची। कॉल पे कोई पूछे OTP दो ना जी,
तो कह देना उनको।
नाची 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 नाची। मिलके स्कैम को एंड करो, हमेशा सेफ रहो जी।
Being a hero is all about heart. It's not about ruling the world. It's about owning it. It's not about winning a race. It's about delivering a smile to the human race. It's about a spirit that just cannot be confined by geographies. It's about the heart that beats for the future and a soul that echoes the values of generations. And yet, being a hero is never about the hero. It's about the millions who celebrate them. Hero Motorcorp, the motorcycle leader. There's a gush of wind that hums a sweet song. There's a gush of wind that fights like a hero to fill the world with possibility. There's a gush of wind that jumps across oceans and mountains, embracing the entire planet. There's a gush of wind that blows away darkness. there's a gush of wind that blows for humanity.
Mitra, the Chief Strategy Officer and Head of Growth of Tech Mahindra, where he's responsible for driving global business growth. Mr. Mitra is passionate about scaling SMEs and SMBs and startups with a focused interest in deep tech and innovation, as well as driving positive change through social empowerment. Mr. Mitra is an active member of the CII National Startup Council, CII's National Committee on Skill Development and Livelihoods. He also chairs the group on education, functional literacy using digital tools, and fintech of the CII Council on India at 75. I request Mr. Mitra to kindly take the proceedings forward.
Thank you, Kavita. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
Thank you for this evening and the session that we got in. We've got a extremely rich panel members talking to us from various parts of the world on a very, very important topic of technology and governance. And I think that the importance of that is the fact that we have a very rich set of panelists. And also let me start by sort of reminding that we often start our conversations, at least by saying this is what used to happen. And this is sort of things have deteriorated in governance during our time or in anything else that we talk about. But in this case, with the evolution of technology and the usage of technology, I think that's a completely different conversation that we're going to have. The topic of our session today, technology and the future of governance, seems absolutely relevant only because technology and the impact is not only felt for us here in India, where you've heard of terminologies like the jam stack and so many others, but you'll hear from our leaders from across different parts of the world, from Tel Aviv to Seattle to Canada, and every aspect of where we are to Delhi, Gurgaon, every aspect of it, and we'll have representatives from academia, from business, and from think tanks and social groups that are participating in this. As we start off, I want to first sort of do a quick introduction of our panelists. I'm honored to be able to host them. I'll do a quick round of introduction, and the way we will probably bring this together is the topic that we probably want to talk today as part of the governance is the huge usage of technology on digitization. And digitization, as you know, we oft use with things like AI, data science, cybersecurity, all of those topics come into play. And now with every evolution of technology, the citizens' impact or the governance and the citizens' impact is the biggest impact that one should be able to tell. Like we have seen that during the pandemic, how important, and I call it survive to thrive journey. The pandemic started at a situation where we were all looking for survival. And now with the usage of technology, most businesses are starting to look at how to use digitization to thrive in that world, where you talk about, things like supply chains being impacted, supply chains being digitized, so on and so forth. Then therefore for governance, just in India, we've felt such a huge impact of, digital commerce, digital governance, things that we could do much more effectively today, sitting at our homes, has been enabled by technology and governance sort of coming together. So we will talk a lot more about that in every part of our sessions, but the way I have themed it, it's a very Indian theme in one way. There are probably movies. I call it in Hindi, it's called Kal, Aaj or Kal, which is basically means yesterday, tomorrow, and day after, or the future. And that's what I want to cover today in our session with these panelists. What was our governance like yesterday? How did technology enable us to get it here today? And what is the opportunity with technology to create a future that we are all looking for? And that probably is where all sorts of new technologies and this acceptance comes into play. Before I start, I want to welcome the eminent participants, the panelists in this call. Let me start with Mr. Rohinton Medora. It will be good if, Rohinton, and as I call the panelists hands up, I don't know whether people can see your names across, but if you can just raise your hand, I think people will recognize who I'm calling out. Thanks, Rohinton. Rohinton Medora is president of Center for International Governance and Innovation in Canada. He was vice president of programs at Canada's International Development Research Center. His fields of expertise are monetary and trade policy, international economic relations, and development economics. Rohinton sits in the Lancet and the Financial Times Commission on Governing Health Futures 2030, as well as the Commission on Global Economic Transformation, co-chaired by Nobel Economic laureates Michael Spence and Joseph Stills. So you know you're in exalted company when you are speaking with Mr. Medora here. And thank you, Rohinton, for joining us all the way from Canada. He tells me it's nice and crisp, and he's 7 minutes away from walk to his office. Some of us in Delhi and Calcutta are probably, are weathering the storm of cold winter coming in. This is nothing like what Canada faces, but welcome on board. My next guest is Mr. Samitra Dutta. I think from Professor Samitra Dutta is a professor of management at SC Johnson College of Business, Cornell University, which is one of the top universities, not just in America, but globally. Professor Dutta is currently the professor of operations, technology, and information management at Cornell, SC Johnson College of Business. Earlier, he was the founding dean responsible for undergrad and grad business education at Cornell University and at Cornell Tech in New York City. Currently, he is the member of board for Sodexo, Dassault Systems, member of shareholder council, ZS Associates, Chicago, USA, and executive chairman, IGCI Inc. His research interests include AI and the future of work, which is so relevant as we were talking into this, social media and big data analytics, technology and innovation processes. Thank you, Professor Dutta. Thank you for joining in. I know you are normally in New York City, but today you are far away in Seattle, so it's early in the morning there, and thank you for joining in. Appreciate that. Mr. Federer, thank you. You are joining in us from Tel Aviv in Israel. Mr. Federer is the CEO and co-founder of Zen City. It's an urban startup from Tel Aviv, collecting and analyzing wide-scale citizen feedback in cities using advanced AI. He's a member of the WEF Future of Cities Advisory Board and former Chief Operating Officer and founding member of Tel Aviv's University SETI Center and Interdisciplinary Research Center for 21st Century Urbanism. He's also the youngest board member of the Israeli Urban Planning Association and a member of ONIA, Public Space Hacking Collective, Innovation Advisor to the City of Tel Aviv, Global Shaper at the World Economic Forum, and Paris Innovation Fellow. We are extremely honored, Mr. Federer, for you to join us. And we all know how advanced technology usage is in Israel and how the whole startup ecosystem works in it. So we are extremely glad that you were able to join us. Thank you for joining us. My next panelist is Mr. Amit Sinha Roy. I know Amit for a long while, and I sort of introducing him at the end because he's more closer to home. I live in Noida, he lives in Gurgaon. And, to bring him together in this panel today, thank you, Amit, for joining in. Amit brings in a vast experience of his business. He's the Vice President, Global Head of Marketing and Communications at Tata Communications, and has been defined, differentiated, and winning global market strategies for Tata Communications, enterprise, service provider, and media and entertainment businesses across a variety of markets, India, APAC, Europe, North America, and so on and so forth. Prior to Tata Communications, Amit was head of marketing at Cisco India and SARC at Cisco India. He was also held various senior positions in HP, Syntel, and Compaq. Thank you, Amit. Thank you for joining in. I hope I'm not missing anyone. At least my screen seems to suggest I'm not.
Ms. Davra and Mr. Singh have already joined.
Okay. So I didn't see them on the screen, so sorry about this. Ms. Davra, welcome on board. Thank you for joining in. Ms. Davra is the additional Secretary, Department of Promotion and Industry at an Internal Trade, DPIIT, Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Is a very accomplished administrative officer and a very senior administrative officer in the government, with more than 2+ years of decade in public administration in India and abroad. She has worked in many ministries, including international postings with Ministry of Finance for 6.5 years, a tenure of 3.5 years in China as head of the economic wing in the MSC. In growth and development policy, she has strong learnings from two of the most populous nations, namely, obviously, India, where we are today, and China. Her public policy experiences in India and China led her to author 2 best-selling books on public policy, Poor but Spirited in Karimnagar Field Notes of a Civil Servant, and China Behind the Miracle. Thank you, Ms. Dara, for joining us. Can you hear us, Ms.
Yes,
Dutta?
thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for a very
Thank-
kind introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. We are honored that you were able to take time to talk to us. And finally, a very leading technocrat, bureaucrat combined, Mr. Abhishek Singh. Abhishek's a good friend and someone that I have spent a lot of time in learning. Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you for taking time to join us. Abhishek is the president and CEO of National E-Governance Division in MeitY, which is our ministry for electronics and IT. Abhishek Singh is an officer of the 1995 batch of Indian Administrative Service with diverse experience of governance and policy formulation. He's presently posted as CEO of what we call as the MyGov, with additional charge of President and CEO of NEGD and MD and CEO Digital India Corporation. In his role as National E-Governance Division, he coordinates projects relating to Digital India, especially DigiLocker, Umang, Geoinformatics. He has also been the efforts on communications on COVID-19. Actually, that's how I came into close conversation with Abhishek when the whole country was leveraging technology to impact what we could do during the COVID-19 crisis. So the format I suggested is that we will do a discussion of what I called as Kal, Aaj or Kal, yesterday, today, and tomorrow in governance with technology. But we'll start off with an opening note from Ms. Dutta. So if we can first then do the follow-up across the different panelists, but we'll start with Ms. Samitra Dutta. Ma'am, all yours. Thank you very much for joining and look forward to hearing about you.
Thank you very much. My greetings to the distinguished panelists, the participants. I'm very happy to get this opportunity to speak on technology and the future of governance in this 27th edition of the CII Partnership Summit. We are all aware about the massive explosion in information technology the world over and the developments, the impetus it has got during the pandemic. And we are also aware of the confluence of electronics and telecommunications and how it has opened up new vistas of transmission, storage, retrieval of information as never before. These are all interventions and developments which are now actively being used for decision making, not only by the corporate world, but also in public administration. And I'm going to give a few examples of what is happening currently, how we are actively using technology in delivering services, in delivering good governance to investors and citizens. I will be giving a few examples from our work here in the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. And we do have a serious challenge of delivering good service to the doorstep of a very large population here in India. And e-governance becomes not only a necessity, but a very integral part of our everyday work. So we do face the challenges of automating the departments and, as I said, also delivering the good governance services to the doorstep of the common person. The importance of governance is inscribed in the Indian Constitution, which is built on the premise of sovereignty, a sovereign, socialist, secular, and democratic republic, committing itself to democracy, rule of law, and welfare of people. And hence, e-governance is an integral part of our mission to deliver on the above ideals. Here, I'm sure my colleague Abhishek will be speaking more about the Digital India initiative and how it has expanded across 250,000 and more Gram Panchayats, villages in the country, and how there is a huge potential in terms of the economic value from the digital economy that India can get. But coming back to the topic of governance, technology and governance, like I said, I will be giving a few illustrations. Recently, we have soft launched the National Single Window System in India, and that is the first of its kind initiative, where we have brought together the clearance portals of various ministries and Government of India and the state governments for potential investors. The investors have often raised the issue of having to visit several portals or having to visit several ministries, having to travel to the state state government and several departments to get clearances which they require for investment in a greenfield or a brownfield project. And that is where we've made this intervention in good governance by putting together the services under one single portal and end-to-end facilitation and support to the investors, which includes a pre-investment advisory called the Know Your Approvals, which has mapped about 2,500 approvals across the states and the central ministries. So an investor can go to the portal and feed the sector where he or she would like to invest and gets the relevant clearances required. At the same time, there's a common application form and the investor can fill that in without any duplication of having to fill up the same form in the other ministries, departments, and there is a document repository as well. And very happy to say that we've been supported in this work by our colleague sitting here, Mr. Abhishek Singh from METI. So we've been doing this work together. This was soft launched on 22nd September this year, where we've already brought together about 19 departments of Government of India, and we are going to take this figure to 32 departments onboarded by the end of this year, another few days. We also have already 11 states in India which have onboarded the system, with many more being onboarded rapidly. At the same time, I'd also like to mention another initiative called the India Industrial Land Bank, where GIS mapping has been done for more than 500,000 hectares of industrial land in the country across 4,500 plus industrial parks. And this reveals the the land which is available for industrial activity, which is about 100,000 hectare plus. So you can go to a state of your choice, an industrial park of your choice, select your sector of investment, and the portal will throw up the available plots for industrial investments. It will also give you the mapping of the raw material, the connectivity to the railways, to the air, and so on and so forth. This again we've done with the help of BISAG and METI. This is another initiative which has seen good success, the onboarding of the states, various states in the country which have brought their GIS a mapping of the industrial land onto the system. And we have not just a portal which works, but also an app which the investor can, see on his or her mobile. So these are two examples I wanted to give before I go to a third example, where we have the government has been able to reduce compliance burden on businesses and citizens. This has the exercise has been has had the objective to improve the ease of doing business and also the ease of living through the objectives of simplifying, rationalizing, digitizing, and decriminalizing many of the provisions which were found to be unnecessary and seem to be burdensome for the businesses and the citizens. Digitization and simplification of the forms and records played a big role in this. And so has the auto renewal of licenses, certificates, their rationalization, and so on. As of now, more than 24,000 compliances have been reduced in the last 1 year or so with the help of technology, and some of the interventions which I mentioned are of a technical nature. And I very rapidly would like to also mention the Startup India Showcase, which is again an online platform which showcases the finest startups of the country. And as we are aware, India is the third largest startup ecosystem in the world today, and we have a very impressive number of unicorns. We have also used technology. Startup India has used technology to launch bridges to connect the Indian startups with the global startup ecosystem, and 11 countries have been connected with the use of technology, soft landing platform for the startups from the partner nations, and this promotes cross collaboration. So this was another example I wanted to mention. And I will very quickly come to the end of my examples. There's another one I'd like to mention, which is called Parak. Now, this is again delivering good governance. This portal maps 6,500 plus laboratories across the country, which are accredited for testing medical and calibration laboratories. This portal makes it easy to search labs for a particular product, for a particular test of a particular standard. And this has been brought together on a single portal, again by the department. And lastly, I would like to also give the example of the project monitoring group, which is again a very powerful use of technology. An institutional mechanism has been put in place to monitor all infrastructure projects in the country which have an investment of 500 crore rupees and more, to map their progress, milestone-wise progress, and to identify any obstacles that come in the way of the smooth progress, smooth implementation of the projects. And this portal is updated on a real-time basis and maps more than 42 lakh crore worth of investments in the country, with information drilled down to the project level, that is to the field level. So I wanted to just give some examples, because I felt that an example would be more powerful than my just making some, arguments or speech. Thank you very much for your patience, and I look forward to the deliberations.
Thank you, Ms. Dara. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. It's been absolutely the apt discussion when you put examples in front, because that shows that it's actually working. And I can, from a tech background, I can tell you that it's quite a challenging task that you have accomplished between the government and the organization within Mr. Abhishek Singh's organization. I mean, thinking about the industrial maps, the GIS, the investor community, enabling business, taking governance and compliance issues out of doing and helping companies come in with the ease of business that they can do is a tremendous achievement, and thank you for that. And we can see that some of this is what has resulted in the growth that we are seeing, whether it's the third largest unicorn setup. Each of them have a huge opportunity there. And it will be great if you could probably be around. I think one of the questions is that what is, or rather, why don't I ask you right now, if that's okay with you, ma'am? Is the vision related from your side of what you see as the future of enabling governance through technology? If you could probably comment a little bit before I go to the other panelists.
I think the vision which is being translated into reality came through the examples I've already put across. And a lot of it will also be covered by Abhishek when he'll be presenting on Digital India and the Gram Panchayats. So maybe we could piece the picture together after his. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Mr. Singh, I'm going to call on you. As I said, that our panel is going to talk about the yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and you've seen it. From your role as President and CEO of National E-Governance Division of METI, if you would like to kickstart today's proceedings with your views on the changing face of governance, the changing from yesterday to today and then the future, especially as you start to see all the programs that Madam talked about, but also you are privy to one of the things that I've seen the government do very well is the public-private partnership in that regard. Some of those initiatives as being part of NASSCOM and being part of Tech Mahindra, I have seen that very well articulated. But if you were to like to sort of highlight a little bit about how the face of governance has changed and what has happened in this process, it would really be beneficial.
Thank you, Jagdish, and it was indeed a privilege and honor to be part of such a stellar panel, and look forward to hearing and listening and getting suggestions and ideas from the esteemed panelists who are here today. And just picking up from what you said about Kal, Aaj or Kal, and from what Samitra ma'am mentioned with regard to the initiatives taken for increasing or enabling investments in the country and using technology for doing that. So I would just say that whenever we look at governance, whether it's technology or not, the two prime objectives of governance is to enable ease of living and ease of doing business. And today, because of the investments that we have made in technology, right from the beginning, for building the basic platforms like the identity platform or the UPI platform or the DigiLocker interface or the GSTN interface, what has helped us, or the GIS backbone that we have built, what has helped us is that we can use these platforms which are there across the country and widely adopted to work on both the objectives of enabling ease of living for the citizens and enabling ease of doing business for businesses. What it does is that it reduces the cost of compliance, it reduces the cost of accessing services, brings in transparency, and ensures that more and more people have access to services. If you look at examples, and if we look especially the last 2 years, of course, the digital story has been for quite some time, but especially what we have seen is that the pace at which digital transformation has happened across sectors has really been phenomenal in the COVID and the post-COVID world that we see. Whether it's adoption of e-learning by schools and students and teachers in schools, getting onto the e-mode without much investment by government or by any training, they all went on very quickly. And there also the investment that we made on building a platform like Diksha, which enabled that access to learning resources were available in a digital mode, or connectivity was there across the country, or the mobile internet had expanded across the nation. The cost of accessing of data was much lesser. That helped in ensuring that more and more people got access to e-learning tools. Similarly, healthcare, we found telemedicine and remote healthcare getting adopted very quickly. Then we look at e-commerce. E-commerce picked up because of connectivity and because of more and more companies offering products, so people could live life and business continuity was ensured. Businesses went on to work from home, and that ensured that there is no loss of continuity for most sectors that we saw. And all that resulted from the investments that we have made. And as we go ahead and as we kind of build up on top of that, even though the pandemic is coming to an end, hopefully, what we find is that the benefits that has been accrued to us in various sectors will continue to guide us in the future. For example, healthcare, if we look at the National Digital Health Platform, which has been built, or which is now being renamed as Ayushman Bharat Digital Health Mission, the need of it primarily came because of the pandemic and ensuring that technology is used for enabling access to doctors and hospitals. And that led to building the basic building blocks in which citizens will have a health ID and they will be able to access hospitals and health services, and then they will be able to connect to doctors, get the advice or get the consultations done remotely through video conferencing tools, and then even the prescription or the reports that the hospitals or doctors will give will be made to them available electronically, which will become part of the electronic health record, and that will be stored in their health record, which they can share it with anyone easily. So that's the transformation that has happened, which will ensure people are able to access healthcare in a better manner. Similarly, when we look at like application of in the field of agriculture, farmers are able to get better advisory, access to information with regard to input costs, access to information regarding farm prices, and they're able to access services. And what is happening now, if you look at the investments which have been made in various sectors in the past few years, now all that unified with the common identifiers like the Aadhaar is helping us to lead to a stage where which we can call it as platformization of government services. Okay, citizens, instead of accessing services from different government departments in silos, they are today able to access services in an integrated manner across departments. Because for a government, for a citizen, it doesn't matter which department is offering a service. A citizen is looking at government as one organic whole. And with the technologies which are available today, we are able to move on to the next stage of service delivery, in which citizens look at the government as one organic whole, and they are able to access services across verticals. And for the government, what it does is that it ensures that we are also able to have a 360-degree view of the citizen, so that if we are offering a service if we are identified a beneficiary in a particular welfare scheme, the same beneficiary can be given services by any other department also. To elaborate on this further, suppose we have a welfare program called the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Program, under which we offer wage employment to people for 100 days for those people who don't have a job. So if this department has identified beneficiaries who are given wage employment, the same beneficiaries who are poor, who are taking wage employment, they would also be the target beneficiaries of a program called the Rural Health Insurance Scheme, the Ayushman Bharat Health Insurance Scheme. So if this data from the rural development scheme is shared with the health ecosystem, they will be able to offer their services seamlessly without having to do the beneficiary identification again. And this will also enable the government to know which all departments are offering services to whom. And similarly, the same data can be shared with say, for example, the food and public distribution system, which will ensure that they are given access to subsidized food grains also. So healthcare, education, food, then employment, all of it can be integrated, and citizens will be able to access services in a much more seamless, easy manner. And this now is being taken to the next level, is that when we have this information with regard to which citizen is entitled for what, should they need to apply for a service, or can the government offer those services proactively? So this will transform the service delivery paradigm. As we know, instead of citizens going to the government can approach the citizens directly and offer the services. And similar thing is now happening in businesses. For example, if somebody has to incubate a business and he has like proven his income records or something to the income tax department, then this data from the income tax department, he need not prove it again. He can apply to the corporate affairs for registering of a company or a business and ensure that he gets it done quickly without any delay. Then people who are accessing credit, MSMEs and businesses who are accessing credit, if they are able to produce digital records with regard to their financial transactions, the businesses that they have done, the GST records from the GSTN network, then their financial credibility can be verified very easily, and they can be given access to credit, which can help them expand their businesses. The account aggregator system, which the RBI has recently launched, is seeking to do that only. Like, once we are able to measure the financial strength of an entity, whether it's an individual or a business, then to give them credit becomes easier, to ensure that the credits, the loans which are advanced to them is returned becomes easier. The technology enables integration of the services. Technology enables better access to services for citizens. Technology enables better access to services for businesses, and that would ensure more and more participation of more and more people in the economic process. And as we take further, the amount of data that is being generated from all these services for citizens and for businesses, that helps us in building up a data governance and a data sharing framework. And based on that, the applications of artificial intelligence, the applications of machine learning come in. So today we are using AI in various public service delivery by working on these data analytics and trying to find out, trying to build up a model in which we can identify beneficiaries of a program. We can offer better services through chatbots. Like, for example, chatbot has been a major application within the government also. We all know how businesses and financial institutions are using chatbots and reducing the cost of CRM. But in government also, like if you look at the chatbot that was introduced for COVID-19 information dissemination, or the COVID vaccination platform, it enabled easy access to people, because people are able to query what they want and get the reply back from the government. So that has been one example in which it has been used greatly. The next layer of application that we are seeing in government using AI and machine learning is the natural language processing. Because India is a diverse country, we all know 22 languages, and people want access to services in their own native language. So right now, many services are applicable in some languages, but not in all. So the research and the innovation that have been done in the NLP field is helping us build services in multiple Indian languages. And that will ensure that more and more inclusion and more people get access to these services. The next investment that we are making is also in enabling services through the voice platform, because we have almost 700 million people already onboarded onto the internet economy and accessing services of various kinds. But the remaining 500 million people, they would prefer a voice-enabled interface when they are accessing services. So we are in the process of implementing an AI-based voice bot and chat bot on the Umang platform, which offers almost 20,000 services, on which voice-based services will be available. So, for example, if a farmer wants to know what crop he should sow in his land, so then there will be an AI bot which will have data with regard to the land size that he has, the soil health card, the soil health of that land holding that the farmer has, the weather data that can come from the Indian Meteorological Department, the crop history of that plot of land, and then an advisory can be given to the farmer with regard to what crop he should sow, at what time he should be doing the sowing, what kind of fertilizers he should be using, how much pesticide he should be using, and followed up with advices on when he should do the harvesting, which markets he should access, where he should be able to sell their produce. So these kind of applications of AI and machine learning will be the kal, as you may say, the tomorrow of what we are looking at. So I would just sum up by saying that from a silos-based delivery of services, which is the past in which we have built, and from the platforms that we have built, the large-scale platforms of digital payments or identity or paperless governance with DigiLocker, the present is that integration of these services into a platformization of services, and the tomorrow will be that giving services on demand giving proactive delivery of services, using a lot of AI, machine learning, and data science to offer better quality of services for the citizens, which will lead to improvement of both ease of living and ease of doing business for businesses.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you for a absolutely brilliant storytelling of what the government has been able to do thanks to usage of technology. You covered from aspects which were critical for the strata of the society from the perspective of giving beneficiaries the monetary and financial help aspect of every aspect and how digital India is taking shape. And I love the ending with the future of what is the possibility with the love with the the aspects of technology being leveraged across the board. So I think the opportunity for us really is in terms of shaping the whole policy, the public-private partnership, and the ability to create a secure information system, which is what your DG Locker program is all about. And at the end of the day, we all know how important and valuable the information age, the information storage is, and the security of that information is. And that to me is critical. And I'm glad that the government is demonstrating that the value lies in the data that we are creating in this country and the ability for us to therefore list data of citizen benefits. So thank you, Abhishek, for articulating the government and from Mr. Singh, Dutta. Professor Dutta, as you know, is a professor of management at SC Johnson College of Business in Cornell. Professor, I have a question for you. That research areas include obviously the future. I think the future of governance dovetails the future leverage. Can you hear us, Professor Dutta?
Yeah, I actually, we are not able to hear you sometimes, but I think I got the sense of your question. So thank you very much for having me on the panel, and it's a pleasure and honor to listen to the comments of Additional Secretary Dara and President CEO Mr. Singh. I wanted to, of course, put some, let's say, some kind of a more academic framework to this question of governance that we are facing right now. If we just look at the past and think about what our thoughts were around technology about 25 years ago, when around 1995 the internet started getting commercialized, there was a lot of hope and excitement around technology. I distinctly remember the various discussions, the meetings, at various forums, and there was this excitement that the internet broadly shared and disseminated around the world would create a much more equal world, a much more equal society. I remember very distinctly how Estonia around that time period had just recently become independent, and they decided to become the first country to make access to the internet a fundamental human right, because they thought that if people have access to the internet, then essentially you'll never have the restricted information flow that essentially they felt caused the Soviet Union to be able to flourish for so many decades. I remember talking to senior journalists, and they were really excited that this would bring in a golden age of journalism when information would be available and disseminated to everyone freely. Now, if you fast forward 25 years and think about the discussions that we're having around technology today, it's very interesting. I think there are lots and lots of examples, as I mentioned earlier, of how technology is, of course, simplifying lives and making things easier and better in multiple different ways, and improving quality of life for people. But if you just look at the tone of the discussion in the media, tone of the discussion in conferences and events, the tone more globally is one around concern. The tone more globally is about, do we fully understand what technology is doing to our lives? Do we fully actually understand the impact that technology is having, sometimes intended, sometimes unintended, on our lives and on businesses and organizations? And there are so many examples on this front. You can talk about privacy, the whole question about how technology companies are sometimes invading the privacy of citizens, monetizing the data without necessarily the permissions explicitly. You look at all the concerns around cybersecurity, how cybersecurity threats are becoming much more intricate, much more difficult to in fact solve. You look at all the concerns around governance and democracy and trust in society. Of course, highlighted by the Cambridge Analytica case, in which people started questioning the outcomes of major election results in countries and how technology could be used to sway these kind of important decisions. So today, if you look at the general tone of technology discussions around the world, I would say the major focus is on this governance question, because in many ways, the pendulum around technology has shifted from that, I would say, very optimistic, naive, hopeful future that was, I would say, predominant 20, 25 years ago, to a future that is more real, more of concern, and more worrying for many in terms of what kind of a world is technology creating for us today. And the pendulum has shifted from hope to fear. And I really think that the challenge for all nations today is to sort of rebalance this pendulum such that we are able to have a more balanced view. I don't think that the fear aspects or negative aspects of technology are going to go away easily. Those things are going to continue with us. The challenge for us is to be able to balance the hope and the fear together. And that's one reason why I think governance issues become very, very important. And I think, the role of governance is, of course, spread across multiple stakeholders in any country or any society. It's not just the government alone. It is also citizens. It's also the tech companies. And if I look at America, for example, a lot of the general, let's say, attitude in Washington for many decades was that, let the tech companies innovate and don't mess with them, because if you mess with them, essentially, you will mess up innovation, and innovation is so important for keeping the tech cycle going and driving in America's progress. But today, of course, what you see is that under President Biden and many other sort of changes introduced by his leadership team, there is much more concern about trying to not necessarily control, but at least trying to get a better understanding of the impacts that these tech giants are having on society, on competition. What is the impact of all this tech dominance of digital platforms on small businesses? How do you actually ensure that trust is ensured through all the social media giants that are actually dominating the information? How do you actually ensure that the wrong addictive behaviors are not actually supported and promoted by these tech companies? So I think it's very important to realize that the discussion tone around governance has shifted. And I think the most important question right now in governance is about this human-machine interaction. How do we build in more people centricity in technology implementation? Especially, I think, as the level of intelligence and AI increases in systems that are implemented. AI is today no longer just fiction, it is real fact. AI is progressing at a tremendous pace that I think most people don't actually fully understand and fully appreciate. And I think this challenge of how do you bring in technology and people together is the number one question facing us in society and in companies, because technology can be used to replace people directly, can be used to control people and monitor what they're doing. It can be used to, at the same time, to empower people and augment the skills and the abilities. So it's a choice that we have to make about when do we use technology to replace, when do we use technology to monitor and control, and when do we use technology to empower and augment. And I think those choices are not simple choices. Even in simple elements like, for example, medical doctor, how do you actually decide when does the automated diagnosis of x-rays replace the pathologist or x-ray doctor? When does, for example, the detailed monitoring of drivers in Uber and Ola actually cross the limits of freedom and personal, let's say, security? So I think these are very important questions, and I certainly hope that governments around the world and other stakeholders, including corporations and civil society, start taking a much more active role in this. And I'm a little concerned about the future, because what you're seeing in the tech world today is a distinct division between the US and China, and maybe other divisions, other countries too. So there is no international governance in the world of technology. Basically, international governance is breaking down, it's very weak right now. And in the world of technology, it's already getting divided up. So in a situation where China is the biggest trading partner of more than 100 nations in the world, it has tremendous influence in making decisions or influence decisions on technology choices in these countries. So I think, there's going to be a very difficult phase ahead for technology governance in the years ahead. Let me stop out there and yield the floor back to you.
Thank you, Professor Dutta. Can you hear me okay now? Is this
Yes, we can hear you better, yes.
Thanks a lot. I think one of the big discussions that you bring to fore is absolutely relevant because of what we saw. I think it's a good. It's like the understanding similar to like the hype curve that we follow in technology, right? That it's in the beginning, it started to deliver what we think was absolutely relevant and absolutely beneficial. Now everyone's questioning the trust factor, the usage of the data. What is it getting used for? And you bring in a good point of bringing the balance across in that board. And that's going to be a critical one for government and governance and convincing citizens of how the data is going to be used. And that's probably, I don't know if there is a formula to prove that. It's like one of those things that you have to show it by action rather than by statements only. Obviously, policies and governance help, but action shows that whether your data is getting used or misused for different topics or not, unless there is something else in the model that we follow. But I think that's going to be, as awareness goes up and what you can do with it, every company you can see, whether it's in social media or in the government is going to get questioned about the usage of data, and therefore it's very important to build trust, because at the end of the day, without the data, you won't be able to help people. For example, there was a whole lot of the system discussion during COVID here about what is the government going to do with the data, et cetera, et cetera. But I think most of us tend to suggest that saving lives was more important at that point of time. So giving that data or providing the data about your location was a lot more relevant for keeping those lives safe, and therefore the importance of doing that. The second point you make is about the divided world in China and the rest, in terms of the technology break and the two camps getting worked out. Yes, that's not a very good situation to be in, where you are trying to basically manage those two environments. But I guess sooner or later, we will come to a common ground on terms of, as they say, technology is a great leveler. Hopefully that starts to become more commonplace across this. So thank you, Professor Dutta, for your comments in this area. I'm going to move on to Mr. Medora. As I said, he's the president of the Center for International Governance and Innovation in Canada. Mr. Medora, I'm going to ask you a question on your recent work and thinking on the underlying economics of new technologies and big data. What, according to you, is the way to resolve critical facets such as unbundling complex legacy systems to fight new age challenges like overpopulation and climate change? Those seem to be big, hairy, audacious challenges. And for those, you require big, hairy, audacious problem-solving capability. So, and those are big goals for us. We can see the impact of it almost day in, day out. Would you please comment on that, Mr. Medora?
Sure. Great. Well, Jagdish, thank you. And thank you to CII for having me back at one of your events. I think we're supposed to limit ourselves to 2 to 3 minutes in this round, so I will try and do so and address your question. And I'd begin with exactly the point you made, which is, what is the underlying economics of especially big data-driven systems? And it is inherently the case that these are what I would argue are natural monopolies. The more data you have, the better your product is. The better your product is, the more data you're going to have. And so you create this self-reinforcing circle, which breeds natural monopolies. These are good if they work for the public good. And so this is the bridge from cull to cull is I think we're in the present where we have to design systems that go from old fashions of static data using systems to much more dynamic systems that can address these huge global challenges and social challenges. And so I'd reinforce the point that our two colleagues from government and that Samitra made as well, which is the governance here has to balance three things, I'd argue. One is security, meaning the system has to be resilient to cyber attacks and a range of bad actions. Second, it has to guarantee of privacy, including human rights and those kinds of issues. And I really want to make the point that this is as much an issue as in democracies as it is in autocracies. So we should not fool ourselves into thinking that this is someone else's problem. And third, functionality. And functionality is your point about addressing climate change and global health and so on. So we're going to have systems that balance these three things. Second, we're going to have systems that talk to each other, because a lot of the things that you need to address global health in many ways might be drawing from the same data set that we use to address climate change, or some of the very exciting portals that we've learned about from our colleagues in government. So systems have to talk to each other. They have to be interoperable. And for this to happen, we need a common understanding of how data is used and secured. And so I'd say the big challenge here is what some of us have been calling algorithmic accountability. I don't think we can live in a world in which the common aspirin requires a series of approvals before you can buy it at the store, but somehow game-changing technology just comes on stream because it comes on stream. So I think there has to be a layer of accountability to technology that we're familiar with, by the way. You don't fly an airplane without it going through a series of tests. Why should you be able to fly an airplane with technologies that have not gone through those tests? And so there's a series of issues here that have to be thought through. And so I'll end on this point. Again, on the questions of not being deluded. Yes, the biggest divide is between the US and China, but I'd argue that the divide between EU and European perceptions of how data should be used and managed through the GDPR are at least as distant from the US as those from China. And so you have three large data blocks, China, the EU, and the US, that really don't talk to each other, and yet they have to. And this is where, in my view, countries like India come in, because the Indian stack is being examined with great interest. The way the authorities in India are using data to provide public services are being examined with great interest. In about a year and a half, India will be leading the G20 and hosting it. I think this is a golden opportunity, and I know the government is on it already, to create data systems that address and create global public goods that address the kinds of things you said in a way that balances the various imperatives of efficiency, innovation, as well as privacy. So I'll stop there for now.
Thank you, Mr. Madora. I think you make a absolutely strong case for ensuring that we make systems that have bigger impact. We make systems that are solving the big problems that we are trying to talk about. And I think the onus is on the government to start to look at some of these absolutely as a focus area. And it's critical that we start to build those systems together now, as we can see the impact of it starting to play a very, very significant role. And thank you, Mr. Madora. And I think we'll have to remind everyone that we'll have to stick to time zones, timelines very critically, because we don't have too much more time here. About another 15-20 minutes to go. I've got two more speakers to cover and then one round of questions. So I'm going to come to you, Mr. Feder. Your work is, and sitting in Tel Aviv, we are sitting at the hub of a lot of innovation and breakthrough in terms of embracing technologies. Your work in a very, very interesting area, which is on empowering local governments and smart cities using breakthrough technologies. Empowerment is the key word there. How has this attitude towards technology shifted? And how is the scope of lower local governments growing or reducing in the overall scheme of things with the help of technology? How are they making this example work?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have a chance to be a part of the Partnership Summit this year and to share some perspectives from both the Israeli startup and tech scene and from our work with local governments around the world on issues of data collection, machine learning, AI, and so on. Just in a nutshell about our work, we are a startup headquartered out of Tel Aviv, but we actually serve state and local government agencies across the world, about 300 of them, including 7 of the 10 largest cities in the US, including most major cities here in Israel and cities across the UK, Australia, Latin America, Canada, and many other regions. In essence, what we strive to do is we're striving to help local government agencies understand the needs and priorities of the communities that they serve by analyzing massive amounts of comments and online feedback that people share with or about the city. So we look at data from social media, from the city's own customer service database, like call center records. We run online surveys and basically analyze massive amounts of data to understand public sentiment towards different areas of responsibility of government. I think, to me, to your question of how attitudes shifted, COVID has definitely been a catalyst for data-driven thinking in government. I think like a lot of other types of digitization that we were pushed to do we were talking just before the panel about the new normal of hybrid work. As you can see, I'm talking to you from home today. In government, one of the things that this created is that people got really used to looking at dashboards, right? You had to track the amount of cases and the infection coefficient and things like that to make decisions like, do I open the school system this week? Do I allow local restaurants to operate? Should I enforce a mask mandate, yes or no? And that really pushed at least the cities that we work with and the governments that we work with to think about what data can do for them beyond just public health data. So we saw a big uptake in that. And with that, I think is a very healthy process that we saw many other industries go through over the last few years of tying a lot of the decisions that are being made, tying a lot of the business processes to pieces of information that can be later reviewed and discussed to understand what were the main motivations to take one decision or another. And to me, in a lot of senses, that is the essence of democracy, or of a local democracy, where we are able to have a public debate about the reasoning behind the decision made by our government. When the decisions are not being made in a dark room based on gut feeling, but being tied to some piece of data, some piece of information, that we can have the debate on whether it creates course of action A or course of action B. But we all agree that the data is true and that it portrays reality in some way or another. So to me, this is one of the most exciting changes that are happening across government. And the interesting nuance here maybe is that in government, the data that you're looking at should be different than the data that you're used to looking at in other sectors. While a lot of the systems and platforms that we built as a society over the last few years to evaluate data in business are very closely tied to outputs and to revenue and things like that, government requires a different set of systems of data, systems of intelligence, if you will, that are tied to the mission of government, which was much more eloquently put than I could earlier today, to serve, to ease people's ability to live in a place and to do business in a place. And to me, the question of how do we measure that and how do we create systems of intelligence, the data around that is one of the most exciting challenges right now. How do we not get confused by the wealth of data out there and by the ability to collect and analyze a lot of types of data, but actually focus on the things that really matter in the work of government. So that's the change that I'm seeing right now: more adoption of data, more adoption of tools like machine learning and AI to process massive amounts of data, and more tailor-made things that need to serve the needs of government, which are unique and different than the needs of other enterprise or large organizations.
Thank you, Mr. Feder. I think from your perspective and vantage point, it comes in as no surprise that you talk about the usage of data, primarily what I could gather for citizens and decisions to be correlated. And therefore, I see a sense of transparency, which basically means that me as a citizen, and as people start to, and local governments and governments start to make those decisions happen, people know what was the basis of that decision. Why was this decision being made? And it is not just gut feel or thought process that one felt, but there is a sense of data set that giving the decision making to be done in a particular way. So you're participative in the governance in a very, very unique way. The second part you make is also very important, which is that, and that's very interesting, is how the same data set has to be received and perceived differently by the government versus separate non-government initiatives. And because obviously the business of governance and business of government and the objective of the government is going to be quite different than the usage of the same data differently. So it's like they say rightly that if you ask the right question, you're going to get the right answer. But if you don't ask the right question for the same data set, you could get a very different answer. So I think that critical analytics behind it is very critical. And thank you for that insight. Finally, I'll come to our last panelist, and Amit. Amit, question for you really is, having been on the telecommunication and digital ecosystem for a while, can you recommend or comment on the importance of digital infrastructure and the role it had to play in enabling government? And what are the new set of investment areas that you see, organizations such as yours and the industry investing in that will enable digital governance?
A great question. I hope I'm audible. So clearly, in my opinion, robust digital infrastructure lies at the core of building, the functional and effective model, right? If we look back, like you said, past, present, and future, the physical infrastructure that we build, highways, bridges, and we continue to build, railways, airports, etc., they're playing a huge role in transforming that part of our capabilities, right? Now, the digital infrastructure is absolutely going to be of utmost importance to make sure we're able to deliver to all of the wonderful things that we heard and have been hearing on the call today. If we actually distill it, what is it? It is data, the applications to process that information, there's AI, ML, various other aspects of it, connectivity, both from the application and data perspective, as well as from an end user perspective, so that end users can access it, can supply data, can then take data and study it and use it. We heard about security. Now, security is of utmost importance because this is critical information that we are storing. Privacy and security go hand in hand. And then let us also not forget, to keep all this running, you need a very robust power infrastructure, right? Sometimes we forget about the utilities, right? You need the power infrastructure, otherwise, you're back to, diesel gensets and all the other issues that we have, right? The other area that, I would like to focus on is the compatibility across systems, right? There was an aspect of that Rohinton called out in his part, right? Where the ability to be able to cross-pollinate, be able to use and leverage the data across systems so that we can actually take the combined data and information instead of having to collect data. Sometimes we have systems that we see which are competing platforms for whatever reasons, right? And that for collecting citizen data, we need that one single moment of truth, right? That one data, right? Rather than having to feed in information over and over again. The ability for smart cities, for example, to be able to communicate across each other so that, information can be passed easily. I'll give you one example, which is very frustrating. If you are transferred from one state to the other, deregistering and re-registering your automotive car, right, or your motorcycle, it is a huge task. Why should it be? It should be easy. It should be automatic. Why should we sweep that under the carpet and then release another BH number plate, right? That's putting a band-aid on the problem, right? The problem is to, that's a solution, but I'm just putting out one citizen service, for example, right? The other two areas which I really didn't hear, is IoT, right? Internet of Things, both from ability for service capability as well as, delivery modernization, drones, right? So these, all of these coming in together, I know I'm throwing a lot of technology, but I know you're short on time, but to bring all of this together so that we are able to holistically provide, what is it that we're providing? Citizen services at the end of the day, right? So that is something I think this capability, if we build on it and build on it wisely, choosing the technologies, I think you said, where should we look at in terms of investments, right? The investment areas, obviously choosing the technologies, the platforms wisely, so that there is the ability for it to work together, to coexist, to transfer information so that we don't end up with systems which are disparate and don't speak to each other. The final area that I'd like to touch upon is skill sets, right? The ability to build the technology skill sets, starting right from education, and then to be able to retain that talent in India by providing them adequate opportunity and roadmap to grow in the country so that we don't lose our top talent as typically it happens, right? Is the final part that I'll put in, right? So that's what is required. That's the fuel to keep this, infrastructure running, the people, right? The skill sets. Let me pause over there and hand it back to you, Jagdish.
Thank you, Amit. Absolutely, you bring us back to basics, like, need the power, need the unfettered internet access, you need the broadband. I'm sure, you will talk about, or you would mean things like 5G, stuff like that, that would help us drive some of those experiences that today we can't give to our citizens. I'm going to try and make sure that we have a quick 10 minutes to close this out. I've bargained for 5 more minutes. I hope that's okay with all the panelists, that we could probably use the next 10 minutes and ask each one of you to just comment on this one simple thing that I would like to, before I close. We obviously know that digital is the future of governance, and governance is dependent on, how well digital is going to be leveraged. I'm going to ask you to name, starting from the same top panelists in the beginning, and if you can get your cameras on, yeah, I can see all of you guys on. So I'm going to ask that question to you, naming that one biggest challenge you see in the future, according to you, to apply the future of governance, and the one biggest opportunity in terms of what technology will provide. Which technology do you think will provide the best opportunity for digital governance? I'll start with you, Abhishek, as you have the largest base of citizens to cover, and your comment for India as one of the largest population there matters. So would you please take it away?
See, the biggest challenge that we would have, which we still have, is bridging the digital divide in ensuring access to everyone with regards to connectivity, with regard to services, with regard to ensuring that across the India, people are able to access the same level of e-services, digital services, as people anywhere else. So that we don't end up creating digital haves and digital have-nots. The more adoption of digital technology has that risk always. So that has to be inclusion. Digital inclusion should be one of the first priorities whenever we think digital with regard to doing anything. That's the challenge that I would say. And to keep it short, I'll just come to the opportunity that we have. So given the investments India has made in technology so far and the services which are there, we have access to huge volume of data. And with the technologies of AI and machine learning there, we have a huge opportunity of building solutions using AI and machine learning to solve the key societal problems at population scale. And if we are able to do that in the field of healthcare, agriculture, education, skilling, then these can become like model solutions which the world can adopt. So the challenges are the digital divide and digital inclusion, and the opportunity I would look at as which is thrown by the AI and machine learning for solving societal problems.
Thank you. You make a very good point, because at the end of the day, the population that you're serving, little over 1 billion, has significant number of haves and have-nots. And digital could be the biggest enabler in that process of that's the biggest. I think that could be the biggest report card or outcome of how quickly digital has been able to divide it.
And when we say that, we include the challenges of skilling and upskilling, but like digital inclusion also has that aspect. Like people who do not adopt to new technologies may end up losing out in the job markets and everywhere else, because some jobs will become redundant. So reskilling and upskilling becomes a part of the mandate of digital inclusion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Abhishek, for that. Samitra, I'm going to come to you with the same question and quick responses from you, sir.
Yeah. So in terms of the challenge, I clearly see the global divisions in governance to be the significant and most important challenge ahead of us. If you look at the digital companies around the world, about half American, half are Chinese. There is no real digital giant from any of the other parts of the world. And that's a real question, because how will the governance evolve? It remains to be seen. So I have a question about that. In terms of opportunities, I tend to align myself with Abhishek's point of view that I think the technology governance, if we get it right, is the only way we will even have any hope of coming close to achieving the SDG goals of the United Nations. There is otherwise no hope for achieving any of the goals in the specified time period. So I think that's what I would say is the opportunity.
Thank you, Samitra. Rohinton, I'm going to come to you now with the same question, please.
I'm going to echo my colleagues. I'd say the challenge is designing a governance process that is truly multi-stakeholder. Unlike previous governance processes, I think this kind of technology requires us to have government, industry or enterprise and civil society come together in ways that we haven't seen. You look at the Bretton Woods institutions, look at the way we've designed global governance. It doesn't really incorporate the kinds of things digital requires. The opportunity is, again, to echo my colleagues, that you have the potential to solve incredible global problems while maintaining the environmental limits. So green growth, which has been a bit of a cliche, is only possible if we use digital technology sensibly. There is no other way forward on this one.
Thank you very much. Eyal, can I come to you with the same question, please, on the challenge and the opportunity?
Wow, it's a big question in terms of both the challenge and the opportunity. I think we talked a lot about the challenges today, so I want to be in optimistic here and focus on the opportunity. And what I want to highlight is that when I look into my my world of local governments, the current state is very unequitable. For example, when we think about the space of engaging residents and hearing feedback from residents, which is where we operate, the current state of how we do it with public meetings and with formal gatherings where you need to be aware of the process and need to have a spare time to join, is a very high bar that stops most people from engaging in the democratic process beyond just elections. And the opportunity that I see in what we're talking about is the ability to leverage the ubiquitous nature, or the fast becoming ubiquitous nature of digital technology, to allow more people to participate, to change that steady state. And even if it's not perfect, we know there's a digital divide. We know people are suffering from the digital divide, but it's still a big step forward from the reality we have today, which is a very, very inequitable one, where only a handful of people get an opportunity to participate. So to me, while there are challenges and there's a long way to go, the opportunity even today is an exciting one that we need to not let slide because of the challenges and because of the risks involved. That would be my take.
Thank you, Eyal. Finally, Amit, your comments on those 2 points?
I agree with all the points made, and I did talk about an earlier challenge, which was the skills, but I would like to also reflect once again on removing vulnerabilities. So I did talk about security, but there are vulnerabilities as well, which is an adjacency. You read every day about people getting swindled because they gave an OTP to somebody who pulled all the money out of their bank account or digital wallet or whatever that is. As this become more ubiquitous, we need to ensure that we educate people, but also have the right guardrails in place, legal, every possible way to ensure that the safety of people's assets, which includes monetary as well as otherwise, knowledge assets as well, is protected, right? So I think removing vulnerabilities is a big challenge that we should look at other than skill sets. In terms of opportunities, of course, again, agree with all the opportunities. One of the areas that we identified, when you look at large corporations in the country, the public or private, they are, further down the line in terms of digitization. But one area that we were able to very quickly identify was the MSME area, right? And so with CII, actually, we've launched the Center for Digital Transformation that's now going on to the fourth year plus, where we've actually been working with the MSMEs and having them go through a digital transformation assessment, making sure that they understand cybersecurity. We've trained thousands of people actually, and several other areas, but I won't go into too much of detail there. But I think that's the opportunity area that we could focus on to make sure that, we heard about the digital divide, right? And this is sort of like a digital divide, the large enterprise versus small enterprise, right? So that's a big, I think, a big opportunity area. Back to you.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you. I think I'm going to wrap up in a couple of minutes and finish this off. First of all, thank you, gentlemen, for tremendous time. Thank you, Ms. Dora, for your time as having been at such a senior position and defining our policy for the governance using digital. Your presence was tremendously valuable in kicking off the proceedings this evening. So I want to thank CII for giving us the opportunity to talk and getting you to come and join us in this panel. But I want to thank all of you panelists. I mean, starting from as farthest as we can go to Seattle to as closest as we can go to Gurgaon. We had everyone here joining in Delhi to Seattle connected, which is probably, one of the benefits of being on a digital platform. But I hear you, and I think all of us will in unison agree that digital is like a tsunami, and I don't think we can sort of move away from it. So the more the governance adopts it, the more the government and the governance adopts it, the better. I tend to agree with that theme, but I also agree with where Abhishek started off from by talking about the most important part of the outcome. That if at the end of all this, if the digital divide doesn't get reduced, then I don't know what we've achieved. And I think the opportunity therefore lies across our board to be able to make sure that both public, private, academia, policy, incubation, startup, every representative that we have in this panel today are working towards making this true and reality, this reduction of digital divide. And I think we caught on a few very important topics: trust, vulnerability, belief. So I think at the end of the day, we want our citizens to believe that this digital system of governance is not one black hole in some part where the data is getting misused or data is getting used for some, some ulterior motive. So the most important part of this governance story, I think, will be about making sure that people start believing in this new way of governance. And we know, like Samitra told us, that when left alone, if it's not governed, what can AI do? What can some of the other things do? So obviously, some amount of governance on the usage of technology and how technology needs to be blossom is critical. So, thank you, panelists. Thank you very much for an absolutely engaging evening here in India and the morning out there in Seattle and Canada. Kavita, back to you to close this out, and thank you for the opportunity to moderate this panel.
Thank you to all the esteemed panelists. Thank you for joining us from all over. Thank you, Professor Dutta, Mr. Medora, Mr. Feder, Mr. Singh, Ma'am Davra. Thank you so much for your presence here today, and Mr. Amit Sinha Roy. Thank you, Mr. Mitra, for proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks a lot.
Take care. Bye.